We're going to cover Chapter 15. That is basically the supply chain management, sometimes known as channels of distribution, sometimes known as logistics. Any of you are supply chain management majors, this should be, what you're going to be doing with your career. So let's start as always with our objectives. Understand the key elements in the supply chain, what it is and what it performs, what are wholesalers, what are intermediaries, the types of distribution channels there are. Remember, this is one of our P's in our 4 P's. So we have product, place, price, and promotion, and this is the place P, per distribution, if you will. Steps in planning a distribution channel, and talk a little bit about logistics. I'm going to give you 2 definitions. The first is marketing channel, and the second is supply chain. I do that because historically we used to teach this as channels of distribution. This used to be housed under marketing. Because as it becomes so complex and complicated, it now has its own industry, if you wish, or discipline called supply chain management. So I'm giving you the older definition and the newer one, and the real difference is technology has allowed this marketing channel to become fully integrated, so that it's really much more complex but much more manageable. Marketing channel is a set of interdependent organizations that ease the transfer of ownership as products move from producer to business user or consumer. So if you think about a can of peas that's in your cabinets in your kitchen, how did it get there? You know, we just go to the grocery store and everything is there, and we don't really give any thought to how any of this magically appears. It's quite a complex process. Supply chain, a connected chain of all the business entities, both internal and external, to the company that perform or support the logistics function. What's different today is that we have everything is integrated. That is called supply chain management. Some of you may know the term ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. That's essentially what this is. It integrates everything involved in the organization. Why do we worry about this? What are the benefits of having a supply chain? Well, presumably, if you do it correctly, and that's a big if because it is very complex, it should reduce your cost. It should give you a lot of flexibility, should give you improved customer service, and should give you higher revenues. Notice I say should with everything, mainly because, again, if these don't work, this doesn't happen. It also takes some time to get all these benefits, so even though you might put your supply chain together today, this month, this year, it may take quite a bit of time to see the return coming back. This is an example of a generic supply chain. And when you think about supply chain management, what you're doing is coordinating all of this. So just a brief look at this. We have all the suppliers, and let's just assume for a moment this is an auto manufacturer. Suppliers would be tires and engines and leather for the seats, and on and on and on and on and on. Could be thousands of them. Your manufacturing facility, once things are produced, they are warehoused. And look at all the pieces that are involved in all of this. They then go to retailers or wholesalers. All of this presumably is being coordinated by the company headquarters, presumably. And now realize we don't even have our consumers or the various suppliers on here. So the complexity should be obvious. This again is a very abbreviated version of Hewlett-Packard's supply chain. You've got those raw materials going into your part suppliers who manufacture them. All that goes into HP. It goes out to the retailers who supply those to the consumers, and then you have your end user, the consumer. All of this really is your supply chain. Distribution channels may be direct or indirect. Direct would be if you get something from Dell. All right, so it comes, you order something online from Dell and it comes directly to you. Indirect is anytime you have something in between there. So if you purchase, I'm trying to think of who it would be. An Acer, is that I think that's a brand of laptop. I don't think you can go directly to Acer, so you would have to go to some retailer or wholesaler, maybe Best Buy or something like that, to purchase that. What do? They do a lot. They provide time, place, and ownership utility. They provide the logistics or physical distribution, and presumably they create efficiencies. Presumably. Okay, let's briefly look at channel behavior and organization. First of all, there is something called channel conflict, which you either have to avoid or manage. If any of you are familiar with a candy manufacturer here in the Dayton area, it's Esther Price. And Esther Price, it's been around since I believe the 30s. They have their own stores in Dayton, and I think now there's one in Cincinnati. They also sell their products in grocery stores such as Kroger's and Meijer's and so on. They have some of their products in gift shops and so on. Anyway, think about the fact that Kroger's essentially is competing with Esther Price-owned stores. That's called channel conflict. That's horizontal conflict when you or the manufacturer are literally competing with your own retailer. Now, what Esther Price has done to avoid the conflict or manage it, there are only a limited number of products that go into the Kroger stores, and when you go to an Esther Price store directly, you have much more variety of products. So they do that primarily by product supply type of product. Vertical conflict is if you're trying to move products from a plant in Ontario, Canada, down to Dayton, Ohio, and think about the supply chain that has to get those products. Let's say they're suppliers in Ontario, and they have to come down to a manufacturer here in Dayton. Well, that supplier then has to get things to truckers, and truckers have to get things to warehouses, and so on. Anytime there's conflict along that channel, that's your vertical conflict. What marketing has done to try to avoid this is put together vertical marketing systems. And essentially these are systems that allow you to either coordinate this with at a corporate level, at a contractual or legal level, or administered in that somebody is managing the channel. Now what you can do with intermediaries, an intermediary is anything between the manufacturer and the end user. So the first piece here is essentially a direct channel. The piece on the right is where you have an intermediary, and essentially Walmart is your intermediary in this situation. What has the internet done to channels of distribution? Well, it's changed it a lot. There's something called disintermediation, and what this does is eliminate or minimize the intermediaries that you have in the channel of distribution. That should reduce conflict, it should reduce time, it should reduce costs, and so on. A lot of knowledge management with a lot of our software systems allow the information to be shared along the channel and so on. Types of intermediaries, and your book goes into these, there are a lot of them. I will warn you though, if you look for positions for any of these, what one company calls something, somebody else may use a very different term. So look at them, understand them, but be aware that these are not set in stone. Companies may call them something very different, use different terms. Independent intermediaries are those that take the products and move them through the channel, but they don't work for any of the organizations. Okay, manufacturer-owned intermediaries essentially are your salespeople who move the products through the channels of distribution. And there are advantages to either from the corporate side. These are just different types of channels of distributions. You have something direct, you have something with one intermediary, you have something with two, and the last one also has two. Steps in distribution planning, as always, always know what your objectives are. What are you trying to do? Then you're going to evaluate your internal and external environment. Choose a distribution strategy. Now we've talked about the traditional or the horizontal, the vertical marketing systems, or you can have intensive, exclusive, or selective. We'll talk about some of those. And then you look at your different tactics that you have to develop. What kind of order processing is there? Who's going to warehouse it? Where are the warehouses? How do you handle materials, transportation, inventory control? How do you choose the channel partners? And so on. Okay, we talked about the conventional marketing system, and that's the type where there really is no control whatsoever. We talked about that vertical marketing system where you can be administered, contractual, or corporate. And then the horizontal is something like the Esther Price and Kroger's. Now, level of distribution intensity. Intensive versus exclusive or selective. Intensive is that you have your products or services in many, many, many different outlets. Exclusive is that you have it with only one or two, or minimize the number. Selective is right in the middle. It's you have some but not a lot. Step 4 is develop your distribution tactics and selecting your channel partners. This is a real critical thing to do. There are many of the ISO certifications now required in some channels of distribution. If you want to send your products over to the European Union, you have to be ISO certified, or you can't even send your products into those countries, and so on. Select your channel partners carefully. Managing the channel, who's going to manage it, who takes control of it, and again, that really goes back to the type of channel you design. I just want you to be aware of the fact that there are many, 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 many laws governing supply chain or marketing channels. These are just examples of how long they've been around. There are many of them. Make sure you have legal counsel on ensuring that you are covering all the legal aspects of your distribution chain. Logistics. It's a process of designing, managing, and improving the movement of products through the supply chain. Inbound, outbound, in other words, something comes into your organization, something goes out of it. Reverse logistics goes back up the chain. Physical distribution, all the activities that move the goods. And that's moving the goods from the manufacturer down to that final customer. It involves many, many pieces. The functions of logistics, inventory control, order processing, warehousing, materials handling, and transportation. This has become such a complex process that many companies are outsourcing their logistics. They're hiring companies, and there's a whole industry that has grown up around logistics. There are a number of companies that do nothing but this for other companies, such as a Procter & Gamble. And in fact, I know that they outsource a lot of their logistics to some of our, and there are a number of logistics companies here in the greater Dayton area, Cincinnati and Dayton. They will outsource those logistics functions to them because they just don't want to do it. It's become that complex and sophisticated. So many times this is being done by logistics companies. Transportation, how do you move the product? And what you have to look at is the dependability, the cost, the speed, the accessibility, capability, and traceability. Traceability, of course, we know with FedEx and UPS, where they can track your package anywhere it is. Dependability, will somebody be there when they say they will? Cost, how much does it cost? And think about if you are an orchid grower in Hawaii and you have to get your orchids over to California for the Rose Bowl parade. Certainly speed of delivery is critical. much more so than cost. So you have to look at all of these sorts of things. Accessibility, it would be very difficult to move products out of Dayton, Ohio via ship. In fact, I think it'd be nearly impossible. So we have to use either trucks or trains to get products to where we can get it on a ship, if indeed a ship is what we're using. Capability, how big is this? How much can it hold? Think about some of the huge ocean-going vessels and how much they can handle. So all of this is involved in choosing your mode of transportation. This is just a comparison of the various modes of transportation. Obviously, the one that is extremely limited is pipeline. That's really only petroleum products and chemicals that move via the pipeline. That's all that they really can do. Inventory control, look at what we've done with all of this just in time. There are many plants around this area that use just-in-time inventory, which means the truck has to appear, unload off the shipping dock, get into the assembly line as it is being used in the assembly line. That's just-in-time inventory. Inventory controls, we have things now like RFID, radio frequency identification, so that there are chips and things in products so that we can more easily identify them. Supply chain metrics, here we go with that daggone accountability again. Think about all the complexity. Think about all the measures, all the performance measures that you have to make sure your channel of distribution is working correctly. Things like on-time delivery, forecast accuracy, value-added productivity, how our returns process, that's a big piece. Order cycle time, that's another one. And then perfect order measurement. And of course there are many more. Those are just examples of your analytics that are involved in supply chain. And finally, some of the trends in wholesaling. There are fewer wholesalers, but larger ones. They certainly are using all sorts of technology today to control inventory and order processing. Because there were fewer wholesalers, they have closer relationship with their customers on both sides, and they certainly are more selective in choosing with whom they decide to do business. So, that's your supply chain management, your channel of distribution, your place P. We will continue on. Again, if you have questions, just contact me via email, chat, or phone. Okay? Take care. Bye.